Hello, I'm John Brink, and we are podcasting on the Brink from downtown Prince George, the capital of Northern British Columbia. Beautiful weather, summer day in Prince George. A little bit smoky around us, but still a very, very beautiful day. I have a special guest today, Michelle Ouellet. Michelle, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
You've been in Prince George for quite a while, right?
I have, yes.
Tell me a little bit about yourself and, were you born here or?
Yes, I was born and raised here.
Okay.
I moved away after high school for a little bit to a bigger city, but I came back.
Vancouver?
No, it was actually Calgary.
Oh, Calgary, okay.
Yeah, I wanted to work for WestJet. That was why Calgary, I think they had a big hub there.
They still do?
Yeah, so I never did end up working for WestJet, but that was the plan after high school.
Why?
I think I wanted to travel.
Yeah.
And because I spoke French, I thought that would be a good...
It would have been very good.
Yeah.
Because you're bilingual, right?
Exactly. And I had done the hospitality program in high school through CTC. So it was kind of like WestJet or work on a cruise ship or something like that.
Yeah. WestJet, you had to be able, initially when they started, you had to, as a student, you had to be able to tell jokes or be funny. But they kind of abandoned that and got kind of to the normal thing.
Yes.
No, I'm just joking. My son-in-law actually works for WestJet. He flies as a first officer on a 737. So quite a career,
cool.
And it's quite a company. Mm-hmm. So you got your initial education here in Prince George.
Yes.
And which school did you go to here?
I went to Duchess Park.
Duchess Park, yeah.
Yeah.
And then from there on in, I always find it interesting. I, as you may know, I write books as well, and I'll give you a copy of the book that I just finished. I don't know if this one here is the one. I'll show you the other ones later. It's Finding Your Passion, Living the Dream, and it just came out. Actually, it's not officially out until the 19th, but what comes to mind, I'll give you a copy of that and signing for you. It's all about so many young people, when they decide, what do I want to do in a career and what choices should I make? And then in some cases they say, well, I really don't know. I go to the university, maybe take an arts degree and then kind of decide where to go. And then in other cases, and I've had several guests like that, that have made choices and they're not very happy about the direction they've chosen and then kind of feel now they are stuck and they're not very happy about it necessarily, and that will affect your whole life.
That's so
what
true.
I'm saying is change at any age.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I happen to have, yesterday I had a guest as well. He changed at 50.
Oh, wow.
A whole new career.
Yeah.
So that was very interesting. The reason that I took this book out, because you come to mind somewhat in regards to this book, is Finding Your Passion, because already you knew you wanted to go into the airlines, but you had another hobby that became a career.
Yes.
And that is to do with hair.
Yeah.
So, and it started off with your sister when you were very young, still 8 or 9 years old, and already braided her hair.
Yes.
It was a hobby that developed, but always stayed with you and still is very much part of your life today.
That's very true. Yep, when I was young, I started a hair business, braiding hair at the park, Clay Park.
How old were you then?
I must have been like 10 years old.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah. Young entrepreneur.
Yeah, it was my cousin and I. She lived by the park, so we would pack up our wagon with all of our supplies and head over. We'd set up at a picnic table and we'd have like lineups of people waiting to get their hair braided. Cornrows were really in during that time, so it's kind of funny. But I think, instead of a lemonade stand, we did that. But my cousin actually later, years later, she designed my logo for me as well. So it was pretty cool that she was kind of doing the marketing back then when we were kids, and I was kind of the braiding. And then years and years later, she ended up doing my logo and website.
Is she also in that kind of a business now? Or?
She is. She's doing more coaching and things like that. She lives in Vancouver now, but she's still an entrepreneur.
Still an entrepreneur. And then, the other part is you have 2 daughters?
I have 3 daughters now. Yes.
Okay, 3 daughters.
Yes.
What are their names and how old are they?
So my oldest daughter is Autumn. She's 16.
Autumn, age 16?
Yes.
Wow.
And then my second is 10 years old, and that is Aurora.
Aurora.
Yep.
Right.
After the Northern Lights, not
Yeah,
the princess.
Famous, yeah. And your third?
And then my third is Lisette, and she's 3.5 months.
Lisette?
Yes.
Yeah, still.
A little French name.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So sweet.
Yes.
Now
Yeah.
the 16 years still going to, did she just finish grade 12?
She's going into grade 12 next year.
Getting into grade 12. It's always a very critical point in life where, as you well know from your career, does she also kind of already is thinking entrepreneurial, looking at her mom and what direction?
No, I think she wants to do the opposite. I think
Yeah.
I think she wants to be a teacher is what she would like to do. So yeah, she's pretty set on that.
Yeah.
She's a smart girl. She does really well in school.
I
so.
find that always amazing with young people. If they ask me, especially after writing the book, that basically talks about that is that finding your passion, meaning getting exposure to the different things that are going out there. You had exposure to flying, travel, and that were intrigued by that and then kind of contemplated, okay, what assets do I have? Well, I'm multilinguistic, so that should make me attractive to an airline or a steamship or whatever it is, and you love to travel, and then...
Exactly.
But
you know what's interesting though is I
Yeah.
think when I was young, I did hospitality, that trade program, and that's probably what helped me graduate, because when I was in school, I didn't really love school. Like I was the kid that was always getting sent to the hallway for talking too much or that type of thing. And I didn't do that great, like academically, probably because I wasn't that interested in what I was learning about. Like a lot of the things I just thought, I'm never going to use this. It doesn't really interest me. So the hospitality at the college, it got me out of high school, and I went there for a year. Have you heard of the CTC program that they have at through the school district? It's pretty cool. It's basically, instead of taking electives, you take a year of trade. So it's very popular for like a lot of trades, like, I don't know, metalwork and things like that. But they used to have hospitality. And so it was more women.
did you go to that course?
Yeah, I did.
Did you have it in college?
It's got taken away because it is kind of funny. Like, you don't necessarily need to go to college to learn how to, well, we learned a lot of like, serving. We got our serving it right. And there were some bartending classes. But it was fun, and it kept me focused. And in order to do the program, I had to get my grades up a little bit. So all of a sudden I had motivation to kind of do better, and so that I could do that, which was really cool.
But I always did love hair, but hair was, for me, was kind of the stigma that was around hair. I didn't want to be just a hairdresser. Like I kind of...
So what attracted you to it? Did you have somebody in your family that was quite involved, or your mom directly?
No, not necessarily. I think I just loved doing it for fun. It was always something I did for my friends.
Yeah.
But after high school, how I fell into hair was I was looking in the newspaper for a job, and in Calgary, because I was waiting on WestJet, not getting anything. And serving, I was a terrible server. So like when I was serving in restaurants, I was constantly messing up and making mistakes.
Why?
So I don't know. I think it's funny because it's difficult. I think I just wasn't good at it, or maybe I didn't love it. I don't know.
Yeah.
So I ended up looking in the paper and seeing what else was out there, and there was an apprenticeship job at a hair salon, and I thought, perfect, I'd be good at that, and I loved it. So just being in the environment, it was really hard work, but I loved it.
So how old were you then when you did that?
I would have been like 18 years old.
18. So you were still very young, right? And you out of your community here, already on your own in Calgary.
Yes.
And so that's kind of where you redefined the commercial side or the career thing of becoming would you call it a hairdresser or a stylist, or it is more than I call when I do my hair, it's a barber, or cost me $15.
Yes.
So actually my wife does it.
I feel like the more current term is hairstylist is kind of the
and so that then became your direction that you wanted to go in, right?
And I think my goal was always just to, if I was going to have to work, just that it was something I enjoyed. And, I think sometimes we think we'll enjoy something and we go to school for it, and then you actually get into it and you realize you don't. And I think that was the case with kind of serving and that type of thing, is I thought I'd really like it, and I did not. But I loved being in the salon, and I made less money in the salon working as an apprentice, but I enjoyed it. I sold my car. I was like, and it kind of gave me purpose.
So how long were you in Calgary?
I was there till I was about 19, I believe, so not very long. And then I got pregnant with my daughter, and so I decided to move back home where I had more family support. Yeah. And so I had Autumn, and then I went into hair school here.
Hair school here was college?
It was a private school called Locks Academy at the time. I think it might even still be around, but yes.
Yeah. So that's kind of where you then became very serious about that as a career, right?
Absolutely.
And you still were relatively young then, in early 20s.
Yes.
The reason that I'm asking the questions is because it's part of my book, which officially will come out on the 19th. And then the whole idea about the book is that finding your passion, what do you really, would you like to do? And a lot of times what it involves and is finding now the interesting part is we have to just mention that we're sitting in our studio and our neighbor next door is doing something. So if you hear in the background drilling and all that kind of stuff going on,
that's okay.
We'll make it part of the presentation, but just in case our guests are thinking it must be the equipment, or no, it's somebody next door or down below.
It happens.
It happens. So anyway, the whole idea is that that how do I hear that so often, so frequently, that you say, okay, what are you going to do as a career? And say, well, I really don't know. Mm-hmm. Saying, well, it becomes important because the way to make those choices is important too. Get exposure to it. Mm-hmm. Read about. A lot of people say, I want to make money, well, that means maybe entrepreneurship. Mm-hmm. Find out more about it. Talk to some people that are in business or are entrepreneurial. Mm-hmm. Either somebody like me, somebody like you. A lot of those people are quite willing to be open to saying, well, can I have a coffee with you? Because I'm kind of thinking about business and I'd like to get some feeling of what happened in your career, my career, or whatever. Mm-hmm. And it gives people exposure and inspiration, maybe, or helps them in the right direction. And I believe that we don't do quite enough of that in our educational background, and to
It's true. Like with my daughter, my conversations with her, I have a lot of friends who you must go to university. You have to go to university, and to their kids, right? And I do think it's important, but I also, someone who didn't go to university and found a different path, I've never, I don't have that same mentality with my kids. I'm kind of like, if you want to go to university, that's great. But I also think that, it's important to kind of work a little bit and make sure you're going for something that you actually want to do. Otherwise, it can be a lot of money and you come out and, you don't necessarily...
Yeah, and then it becomes a question of why to take an arts degree, and that gives you a foundation, mm-hmm. But likely takes 3-4 years or whatever it is. And then still you have to still kind of find what direction you want to go. My oldest daughter, my youngest daughter, Tina, I have 2 daughters. She's a teacher, mm-hmm. and is very good at it actually, and was always kind of thinking, same as you indicating with one of your daughters, is that going in the teacher direction. She's an artist, very good, fluent in Spanish and French and somewhat German, and some Dutch. So it was always an interest in that. But she loves being a teacher, and she's very good. Which usually happens if you enjoy the choices that you have made in a career, then you will enjoy it. And as I say in my book, finding your passion, living the dream. Because going to work then becomes much easier,
I feel it's important to kind of get to know your strengths and your weaknesses, and then find something that maybe plays on your strengths a little bit. Even my daughter, one of her career choices, and her choices to me seemed a little like just the basic things that get presented to you when you're in school, like teacher or police officer. There's so many jobs out there that you have no idea even exist, and I think a lot of kids don't realize that. So it's more about finding what you're good at, and then figuring out all the jobs that would play off those skills or something.
And then become confident in who you are. I think that's all. I didn't have much confidence myself, because I was not exactly an academic scholar either. I failed grade 3, and I don't really even know if people failed grade 3, but I did. And I did a presentation somewhere here, quite a while ago, about 120 people in the audience, and I said, I failed grade 3, and I don't even know if there is other people. And the lady in the back said, and I did. I said, well, there are 2 of us then. That's good. So, and then I failed grade 3 times, grade 7 3 times, and then they had to say, well, what are we going to do with this guy, right? So, and my parents were very, very good, but some of the suggestions were to send me to the mentally challenged school or get me a job. And so fortunately they got me a job in working at a furniture factory and being trained as a furniture maker.
Yeah, that's awesome, working with your hands.
I love that because my grandfather was a furniture maker. He was very, very good. He died in his mid-40s, so I never got to know him. But I saw the artistic things that he did. And then my dad worked in lumber as managing a small lumber operation, and so I loved the lumber industry. So that obviously also became my career. But but I was not very good in school. And in Holland, I was born in 1940, and during the war years, and that was not easy. That was pretty tough on. My mother had 3 little kids. I was born in 1940, and my sister was 1 year older, my brother 2 years older. So it was a tough go, and and then we were liberated by the Canadian Army April the 12th, 1945.
Wow!
And from that point forward, I always knew I wanted to go to Canada, the land of my heroes, and it was just I wanted to go when I was 17, and my parents wouldn't let me then. Then I was drafted into the Dutch Air Force.
Wow!
Good experience actually, but the draft is gone now. I thought it was always a good experience because it's just at the age of 17, 18 is when you would be drafted. And that's just the time that and for a guy in particular, they kind of think they know it all. And if you put you in a big room, beds too high, there's another 40 guys that think they know it all too. It just kind of and create reality. And then especially when they knock on the door and say at 4:30 we want you out and outside at 5 o'clock in the morning, and quite an experience. Anyway, then finally I worked in Holland, and after I came out of the army when I was 20 and a half or so, then worked for a couple of years in a lumber company in Holland, and then finally I emigrated to go to Canada, and I wanted to start with nothing. Just, I kind of felt I had failed, because how it used to be is that if you want a career in Holland, then they say, okay, what kind of diplomas do you have? Well, I have no diplomas. Well, that was not good.
Yeah.
Makes you a laborer. or something like that, at least in my mind.
Right, yeah.
And so then I wanted to go to Canada, start new, because I knew I could do it. And then my dream was to build my own lumber mill. And then left Holland with one suitcase, 3 books, set of clothes, and then I had a total of, I took $150 with me from Amsterdam, and then by the time I got off the bus, I always do this, $25.47.
Yeah, that's so cool.
I had it in my pocket, and then, but I also had this attitude, stay always positive, avoid the negative, passion, and then work ethic, but follows is success. And, from there on in, the career kind of started, as piling lumber, clean-up man, doing all those kind of things. And then within a year and a half, I was a superintendent at one of the largest sawmills here, and that was not good enough for me. I was in a hurry. Then I became a general manager of a smaller sawmill, had an option to buy a share of that sawmill. Was in Watson Lake, Yukon.
Oh, wow.
Have you been there?
No.
No. Gets very cold in the wintertime.
Yeah, I bet.
Snows in July, you don't know if it's late or early.
Yeah.
So that kind of a place. And I was there for 5 years.
Wow.
And then came back here, and then fairly quickly thereafter made a business plan, and then started Brink Forest Products, with 3 employees. And so, but still, I still had problems about having confidence in myself. And it was not until really, when I was 57, things changed for me, because I walked into a store here and I picked up a book, and I still don't know why I did that. It was the book title was Driven to Distraction. And I looked at the book and it said ADHD, and I thought, oh my God, that's me. And I wrote in Dutch in the book, I still have it actually, the book, and in Dutch, that now I finally know who I am. And but I was ashamed of it, because it was still then, even now, still a lot of stigma attached to ADHD.
Yeah, definitely. I had a similar kind of situation when, after I had sort of achieved a bunch of the goals that I had set out to do, like, okay, I found a job that I love, I started a family, had children, I started to be like, there's still something that feels, that's kind of keeping me down, and I couldn't figure it out. And I had a good friend of mine, I said, I don't know if I'm depressed or what's going on. And she was like, I don't think you're depressed. She said, I think you have ADHD. And I said, what? No, I don't. I'm not hyperactive. I'm not all the things that you kind of.
Classic.
Classic.
ADHD.
And she was like, well, it takes one to know one. So she had been diagnosed, and then and then it helped her a lot. And then she started to see very similar qualities. We're kind of drawn to each other as ADHD people.
Did you get diagnosed?
I did. Yes, I did. It was kind of a funny, I went in and my doctor had said kind of like, well, I think maybe you're bipolar, he said, which is often a common misdiagnosis. And I thought, I don't think so. Because I did done my own research.
As I know that goes, bipolar is going up, down, up, down.
Up and down, yeah which we can be very, growing up, my mom used to always say I was very dramatic, right? So when good things happen, I'm very happy. And when things aren't feeling so great, I'm a little bit,
but that's normal, right?
More dramatic. So, and that's a common trait, especially for women with ADHD. So then he said, okay, fine, go get your report cards. I want to see all your report cards from when you were a kid, because it's something that you have your whole life.
Yeah.
And so I said, sure. So I brought them all out, and I think the evidence was all there. Michelle has so much potential if she could only focus, or if she could only sit down in class and not be so disruptive, that kind of thing. So I think for me, the diagnosis was more just I think all those years of just being told to sit down or be quiet, or, it took a lot of weight off and made me feel like, oh, it's not something wrong with me. It's this, I have this ADHD. So, and where it is like can be a gift in a lot of ways when when it comes to like business or dreaming really big, that kind of thing. We tend to have a lot of creativity there for that kind of stuff.
So
Think outside the box.
at what point in your life did you kind of say, I'm pretty sure that's me, ADHD? When was it then?
So after my friend had said that, she gave me some books. And I think as soon as I started to really research it and read about it, I was like, oh, yes, that's totally me. That makes sense.
So when was that?
When was that? Oh man, that was probably after the birth of my second daughter. So she's 10, so maybe 9 years ago or so.
Yeah. Not so many books around then about it. My book would have been around, not my own book, but Driven to Distraction would have been around. That was fairly prominent then. Still is out there actually.
I haven't read that one. I'll have to read that one as well.
And then, the other thing that I did, talking about books here, is, I did this one here, Against All Odds.
Yes.
All of these things are indirectly connected. All the while I built the mill, and everybody would say to me, "Oh my God, you're doing so successful," and I didn't feel that way at all. I felt I had failed, really, right up to the time that I was 57. And then for the next 5 years, our doc that had delivered both our daughters was a good friend of mine, and and it took me 5 years before I talked to him about it. I already had read the book, and I by then did the same as you did. I had the book, then I Googled and did research on it, and there was no question in my mind from the minute that I read the book that that's me. There's no question about that. I was an absolute disaster, so, but then there were a lot of other things like the war years, being exposed to far too many things that you should not see, hunger. My dad was drafted in the Dutch army. Didn't know if he was dead or alive for 5 years. My mom was three little kids trying to bring him up. No food, the hunger winter, 1944-45. A lot of kids died, a lot of older people that were delicate and did not make it. And then seeing far too many people, dead bodies that we should not have seen, bombing and all of that kind of stuff. So an effect of two things, really the inner child, that I got counseling for in my late 50s. Very dramatic.
Good for you.
Yeah, very dramatic and emotional, amazing. And then the other one was PTSD, which still affects me now. Not in an obvious way, but it's always still there.
Yeah,
So, and then the other thing, obviously, ADHD, and which was very good, but even to a certain extent, I always had difficulty interacting with people, more than 2 or 3 inside my little circle around the mill. And then in 1990, my sister-in-law, ex-sister-in-law actually, she dragged me to a Toastmasters meeting, and I said, I really don't want to go there. She said, you should go with me, you like it. And I said, well, are you going to ask me any questions? She said, no, you just sit there and you listen.
I did the same thing. I went to Toastmasters, but I can't even remember how many years ago. But
I love it,
Yeah.
So there the experience. So I went down there, I sat down, and Tag kind of took it all in, and all of a sudden, midway through the meeting, somebody said, okay, John, and tell me something about you. I said, oh my God, So, and so then after that meeting, I said, I'd never go back here. But I did. And I stayed there for 10 years between 1990 and 2000, and became a distinguished Toastmaster, which you already know is the highest level you can be in Toastmasters. I love Toastmasters because for then $2 a week, it is an amazing experience. We'll talk about your experience as well. Just to, that it gave me the confidence, of being able to become a couple of things that were important to me. A lot of people think that Toastmasters is all about speaking. It isn't. It's about listening. More than it is also about speaking and thinking on your feet and all of those kind of things. But to combine all of that, to me, was probably one of the most important things I did. And then gradually, through the process that brought me up to a distinguished Toastmaster, I probably at the end was one of the most active public speakers. And right now I'm a professional public speaker all over the place where I do presentations. Thank you to Toastmasters. And then, the distinguished Toastmaster, the highest level, is I use it even in my business card at DTM because I earned it. Being a DTM, to me, that means a lot in terms of commitment and an achievement, at least from my perspective. And, so that then made a lot of changes for me. And then, from there on in, adding to that, also at some point, again, thinking about writing a book, because not so much hurrah, hurrah, John, but more about in spite of it all. And so now an autobiography, you can only write one of them. It's not that you write it and then say, okay, well, let me do it again. So it took me some effort. So I always say it took me 80 years to live it, 20 years to think about it, 2 years to write it.
I like that.
And I'm proud of it. I will give you a copy of it. And but the purpose of it was simply that. I felt I had to talk about it to encourage others that if I can do it, anybody can do it.
That's
Not
nice.
quite like that, but that's the point that I'm making. The other one that is important to me is the second one that I did is this one, obviously ADHD and all the stigma attached in around it. It's a superpower. There is no question in my mind about that. I could not have done what I did, and again, saying hurrah, hurrah about myself at this particular case, building a company from the ground up, having probably 10 different companies, all very, very successful, and then, being a writer. Can you imagine with grade 7? I have a doctorate of laws from the University Honorary, mind you, of University of Northern British Columbia. Yes! I'm very proud of that. I'm a DTM, and then, so, and I felt I had to write about my experiences with ADHD and why I believe it's a superpower. And then not only for the people that knowingly have ADHD, but also for the people around them. So I believe the frequency of occurrence much higher, male and female, than most people ever anticipated. I believe it may be as high as 20%, in my opinion. And that you cannot, not you, but you in a general sense, avoid encountering it. Either you have it, your family has it, your circle of family has it, your friends have it, or you work in an environment where you must know about it because it's very, very interesting, and all of a sudden people will really find it interesting, but it's not a negative, it is a positive. And
I feel like a lot of hairstylists have ADHD.
And a lot of entrepreneurs do, a lot of billionaires
Yes.
do. And so what I'm saying is, so I give presentations, and I did this presentation, I don't know how long ago. I said a bunch of businessmen, and there were 3 guys that were doing presentations, and he wanted people to talk about the lumber industry here in Prince George. Well, I was the last speaker, and so I said, boy, I've heard enough about the lumber industry, so I'm going to talk about other things, writing books and talking ADHD. So there were 2 or 3 people in that particular room that stuck up the finger and they say, well, either they had or had somebody very close to them with ADHD. And it's now getting to the point a lot of times because I incorporate it in my presentations and I get fun out of it, but there's virtually not a day that goes by that I do not encounter somebody directly, indirectly that either has it or somebody in their circle has it.
Yeah.
And you know, so you know, and with this book, for instance, the foreword. You have not seen this book, huh? Have you? Or?
No, I haven't.
Okay, I'm going to get you a copy of that as well.
Great.
So the foreword is written by a lady by the name of Tracy Lotz. She is a medical doctor and an emergency surgeon, ADHD.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
And so I wrote this book about it, and you know but I was going to say, just coming back to the other one, when I did the presentation and talking about the books, and it is now sometimes getting to the point that so many people interact about it that there are people in the room who said, darn, I wish I had it too.
Yeah.
You know, just kidding,
Yes.
actually.
Well, the stigma is starting to go away a little bit. Like like you said, if you look back 10 years, a lot of people didn't even really understand. We're starting to understand it a little better, which is, it's nice. We're making progress.
And
There's a long ways to go, I think, but there's...
Yeah, oh no, and I agree with you, and I'm going to be more vocal about it. I incorporate it in my presentations, and you know, and our presentations are not all about that. They are about, you know, I think next week we have one or two international ones. We're talking more in broader and broader circles about it, and you know, I will keep doing that till the end of my life, or when I'm not longer able to do that.
Awesome.
Becoming more vocal about it, and looking at it from the perspective of that everybody should try to understand it. And so the book, and I'll give you a copy of it, it was written, it was the idea in mind that anyone can open the book anywhere and start reading. You don't have to follow. I don't like these big books and you have to go on and on. It's not good for me because after 2 pages I'm done. You know, so, but I'm going to give you a copy of that as well.
Thank you.
And a copy of this, and I'll
Thank
sign it for you.
Thank you.
I just want to come back to, how did you get to Toastmasters?
Oh yeah. I was working at a hair salon, and I wanted to be their educator for the products that we carried. So they sent me away to New York, actually, to do some training. And I had to get up for the very first time in my entire life and speak in front of some of my fellow stylists. And I completely froze, and like blacked out, and started crying. It was horrible. Oh. So I think after that, they had suggested maybe I try Toastmasters, which, you know, public speaking is a skill, and I think it's one I didn't practice a lot. And even in school, I kind of remember maybe just goofing around, not taking it seriously. But because it was something I was so passionate about, I took their advice and I did Toastmasters. I didn't go very far. I honestly went to a few meetings, and I thought it was great. But I think in my head, I decided that teaching spin class at the gym would be a similar way to get practice speaking in front of people. So I ended up using that as a tool to kind of focus on public speaking, I guess.
So one of the things that I was looking for is you went to New York because you have that, what is the name of the organization, the two names that do products, and you were quite involved in it.
Yeah, so I went to New York a few times when I worked at the salon in town, Razor's Edge. It was for Bumble and Bumble. Does that sound familiar?
That's the one I was looking for.
So Bumble and Bumble had what they deemed a hair university. So it was kind of, and
that's the Harvard of university.
The Harvard of hair, they call it. Yeah. So it was pretty.
I thought it was interesting.
It was a very cool experience. You go, they have kind of an auditorium, and you do your demos and you take your notes.
So as part of that, you had to do a presentation?
Essentially, yes. So I had taken a bunch of workshops there, and then the salon that I was working for nominated me to sort of be their network educator. So it was my job to teach monthly classes to the other stylists in the salon.
Right.
And so I had to go to get training for that. So,
Right.
So that I could teach for the brand, essentially.
Right.
And it was public speaking, and they filmed us. So they filmed us, and then they would critique us. And it was a very, like, there was not much to critique because I blacked out and didn't get much words out. But it was devastating to me. It was because I was so passionate about it, and I wanted to do it so bad that I was determined to kind of keep going with it and figure it out. And, so I did Toastmasters a little bit. I really liked it, and then I started teaching spin, like the cycling classes. And we had to film ourselves teaching a class in order to pass.
So where do you do this spin?
I don't do it anymore. I was doing it at Gold's and Live and Lift.
Because I go to Gold and I hear them up there, oh my brain spinning. So
yeah, it's the same. It's the same thing. You're getting up in front of people and you're speaking, and it was a way to kind of calm the nerves. And I honestly thought being on the bike would kind of help, because it was almost, it must be an ADHD thing, but like doing the bike and being able to speak, it made it easier for me.
Yeah.
But it took me like 4 tries to do this video and send it in, and I just kept going with it. It took a lot of practice to get good, or to get.
So, I find it very interesting. How long did you go to Toastmasters? How many?
I don't even remember. It was so long ago. I barely remember. I think maybe 2 or 3 meetings.
Yeah.
So not a lot.
Sessions.
But I just remember thinking, this is great. And then I just shipped and started doing something else that was kind of giving me a similar, just a similar tool to be able to speak in front of people.
I think it's important for you and me to talk about it because, I had the same experience as I already said earlier. I could not negotiate, interact outside of my group, maybe 2 or 3 people. If it was outside of that, I couldn't do that, which made me look like I was antisocial maybe, but I didn't have the confidence. And even I've been everybody said, oh, you got this bill, and you got this, and you think I'm so secure. I didn't feel that way,
It was the same for me, and I think when it came to speaking, obviously doing hair, I was one-on-one conversation. I really, really enjoyed, and I could do that. But the minute I was even speaking in front of, 8 people, I would freeze up, and it was really difficult. So,
same as me.
Yeah, as soon as the pressure was on, or all the odds. Maybe a little bit of perfectionism has something to do with it too. Maybe. But yeah, I think letting go of the being perfect and you're just trying to help people and like those kinds of things. I'd have to tell myself, even doing something like this, I would never have been able to do years ago. So
yeah. So I remember, that I forget when I was probably in the 80s, early 80s or so. I was a very good writer, and always have been, and it's kind of interesting because I grew up speaking, my mother tongue is Dutch, and in Holland, I'm from the northeastern part where they have a dialect that even if I speak my dialect, the people in the rest of Holland don't even understand me. So I grew up speaking dialect. So I grew up speaking dialect. Dutch to me was an acquired, and I was not very good at it, even not today. I'm good at dialect. And then I had to acquire my skills in English, which, but was a bit of an experience, but being immersed in it, gave me the ability to learn that fairly quickly. I was able to do a presentation about value-added manufacturing. How can we create more value in the wood that we manufacture rather than making 2x4s? We can do a lot more things with it. So I had the ability to make a presentation to a senior level of government then in power in Victoria. And there were the Minister of Forest was there, the Minister of Economic Development was there, and all the senior ministers, but there were probably 6 or 8 of them. And I had done my physical presentation, and then I was going to make the oral presentation. I froze. I couldn't say a word.
Yeah.
And it destroyed me. In terms of there, I had this one opportunity, and I couldn't get a word out. I couldn't. Nothing.
Yeah.
And so that part, and then and the reason that I talk about it, and you do and should, is that it is the lack of confidence, and a substantial portion was directly, indirectly related to my background, in particular ADHD. I was born ADHD, so are you, and so, but what it did, it made me feel lesser than others, and being looked at as lesser than others. When I was 14, I got a job at coveralls on, so even my peers that would go to school with me, then I could not ride with them as they were on the way on their bikes to the 8 or 10 kilometers to go to school, because I was a laborer, saying you should not, and all those kind of things, right?
Yeah.
So then, obviously finding out ADHD, the book, but that was the trigger. The other one was Toastmasters. And then when I was 75, I think I started writing on this book about 4 or 5 years ago. I'd been working on it for a long time, and then saying, if I don't do it now, it will never happen. So that's when that came into being. And then I really enjoyed it, actually. And then from there and then, I kind of made a commitment to myself, every year I'm going to write a book. And so then there was this one, and then the other one, ADHD, and then this one, Finding Your Passion, Living the Dream, and then the other one that I'm working on right now will come out next June, July, and that is Living Young, Dying Old. And it's not the obvious, obviously, but it's about the quality of life that you have for extending. Everybody wants to extend their life as long as possible, but quality of life means something different. How do I stay physically fit, mentally fit, have confidence, enjoy what I'm doing, diet, all those things that are all relating to it, being proactive in terms of who am I physically, mentally, and being proactive in that, and doing all the things that I can do. Fortunately, my wife is very proactive in that area as well, so that helps me as well. But and then feeling I have to write a book about it. So that book, we are already well into the book, should come out next June, July.
Cool, good for you. That's awesome.
And then the other book that I'm doing is one about the Forest in the Sea, will come out next year too, and that makes 5 books. It was grade 7. That's not bad.
That's pretty good.
So the point that I'm always making is that if I kind of look back to the story, like looking, the inner child was, a difficulty in our relationship, as people do from time to time, and then doing that, having counseling, the counselor said, that John and me should have a discussion about the inner child. I'd never even heard of it, and then my partner agreed that she said, because, and that was quite an experience,
I have a question for you. So how many staff members do you have now, like with your businesses? Do you still?
Close to 400.
Close to 400. So how do you manage all of that? I think that should be the next book after the... I'm curious, because I'm slowly growing a business, and I find that's the part that I'm always like...
So putting it into perspective now...
manage your time, and how do you...
Yeah, putting it into perspective, our lumber side is somewhat curtailed, so we're probably around 250 right now, but normally about 400. So we have about 10 different companies, and then we have, what I say, 3 silos. The one silo is lumber. We have a lumber mill here, one in Vanderhoek, one in Houston, and I intend to double the size of that. Then we are also the largest warehousing and logistics company in northern BC, and then we are also real estate developers, residential, commercial, and industrial. So how did it all start? And I get asked that question quite a few times.
Like the time management piece is where I'm curious right now with business and like managing all the stuff. How do you
There is nothing more challenging than right-sizing your company or your entity around you. And that could be at any stage. At one time, at what point you go to the next stage. And then making sure that you don't get so much overhead that it cannot carry the company forward. And saying, okay, the business model should look like this, and then going to the next stage, and then have a good idea about what should it look like as I go forward.
Right.
And do I want to go there?
Right.
You know, because sometimes I say entrepreneurship is highly overrated. A lot of people think that all you do is plan holidays and bring money to the bank.
Yeah,
But
no.
it isn't. You know, and so
true.
the other thing that I would suggest to that question, Michelle, is that talk to people that you respect and that are business oriented. They love to talk to you, like I do now, because we're sitting here podcasting, but we will develop a relationship after this, and hopefully to the stage you say, okay, John, I'm going to talk to you, what do you think about this? You know, I think that would be, a lot of entrepreneurs would love to do that, and a lot of people they say, well, I can't do that because they're so busy and they're so important, or God knows what, but that's not so a lot of times, so the key for you would be, in my opinion, is to kind of look at it in terms of having clarity in terms of where do I like to go, where are the opportunities, and then how do I go step by step by step. The most difficult part of getting a business to get to that stage where you're now independent. So where independent meaning you have enough liquidity that you're not at risk.
Yes.
Or you cannot meet the payroll next week, or so. And that some people that have been extremely successful would say to get to the first $1 million is the most difficult.
I've heard that. Yes.
Journey to get to.
Yeah.
Once you're down there, then it becomes a question: where do I go from here? And then there will be mistakes along the way, but the best advice available to you is look at people that have experience, that are willing to help at least share with them their experience.
Yeah.
Now, part of that you will find in my book, but it goes with this and that. I've been to the very deepest depth, and and have gone through some challenging times. So.
Yeah. Makes it
How do I manage it today is that, for me it's always a question of having good people around me, so, and that includes sometimes having to make difficult decisions.
Do you find the right people that maybe areas that your strengths aren't, that you find the right people that is their strength?
So in my particular case, we have, half a dozen companies that are active. And then, in particular, the lumber side that's active. So we have a mill here, a mill in Vanderhoof, one in Houston that is paused right now. I make sure that I have the right people in those places, make them accountable, and then give them responsibility if I believe they have the ability.
Yeah.
The other thing that I do in my company, somewhat unique, I'm the sole owner of all my companies. I have no other shareholders.
Yeah.
That gives me the advantage of I can take risk that are not risk in my opinion, but that would be difficult to convince others.
Yes.
So, those kind of things. And then on the interior warehousing, I bought it as an existing company, saw it as an opportunity because the people that owned it, 3 shareholders, wanted to get out, and I worked on them for probably 10, 15 years to say, every so often I would say to them, I said, are you ready to sell? And the same as the operation in Vanderhoof. But if you can interact with somebody that you trust and feel comfortable that they could give you good advice is that people that have been there before, and and have gone through it, and to weighing the risk at a particular point is always very, very important. And then knowing what size should it be. Right sizing the company is probably the biggest challenge.
Right.
Even
Good
for
advice.
me, so. But
Nice.
after our conversation today, we will always stay in touch. Always feel free to call me or other people. For a lot of times, entrepreneurs they love to interact with people that aspire to entrepreneurship, or and saying, can I run this by you and see what you think? I say, well, sure.
Yeah, that'd be great. Definitely, like for me, for the salon, what kind of makes it unique is the academy part. So like the school and the way we operate is very much kind of like I train all the staff, so there's a consistency, and our goal is to have our clients feel like they can see anyone in the salon. And we also have different price ranges for the levels of stylists, which is a little bit unique to the salons here in Prince George, not necessarily to salons everywhere, but here. So I think, my main goal is I want to see the business grow and grow the academy and the school. And I think somehow back when I first opened, I did look at working with the college, but like you're not as flexible when you make those types of partnerships. So I kind of was like, no, I can do this on my own. And so I've been kind of doing that. And we just went downtown. It was 3 years ago, which was right when I think we opened downtown. I was able to buy the building, which helped during that time. But then 3 months later, I think COVID happened and we shut down.
Timing was not a good one.
The timing was not ideal.
But you survived that, so that's
we
a
have,
good one.
yeah.
So that is a big accomplishment. So
yeah, it's been good. I live downtown. I work downtown. I love downtown. I want to, see downtown grow and more businesses stay.
Yeah, and I agree with you. So what we should do at some point, you give me a call and we'll get together and kind of understand better what you do, and then at least give you my opinion about it. But it's the hardest thing is to get started, and then from the next step is to kind of get it to the point where it is stable, and now saying, okay, what should I do next? Because the next step become even more critical, because the existing base company is still somewhat fragile, and especially when you're experimenting with different models, and you want to take your time and just being as sure in your mind as you can be, so.
Yeah, I think that's exactly the phase we're at. We're just getting that stable, and it takes time, right? Training your own staff, and that does take time. Yeah, I think that's one of the qualities of ADHD that maybe is we're a little impatient sometimes. I am.
It's not that comes. That is the same as me. Is being able to, and part of that is ADHD with me. I'm in a hurry, and but I'm very careful about risk. I know my delicate areas in terms of I have amazing energy, even now at approaching 83, I'm in the next 3 months. I stay physically in shape, mentally I'm in shape because of the books, the podcasting that I do. I go to the gym. In 2018 I competed here locally in bodybuilding physique, came in second in bodybuilding, third in physique. Then that qualified me for the provincials, came in third in bodybuilding, second in physique. That qualified me for the nationals and the Arnolds. And
nice.
then COVID happened, and now I'm training again for 24, when I'm going to be that year 84. I'm the oldest competitive bodybuilder in North America.
That's awesome.
And I'm going to compete again.
Good for you. Have you seen the Arnold documentary on Netflix? It just came out. I think I just started watching it.
I have not seen it.
It looks good. You'd probably like it.
Yeah. So I'm going to give you this one to Michelle, Mchel.
I should have brought you something. I should have brought you I'll get you something, some current swag.
Well, the next time we meet, you should give me a call, and then we'll get together for coffee, and or I call Scott, and then 'cause Scott kind of organized my calendar a lot of times, and
I need a Scott in my life.
yeah, and then we can go for a coffee, So
That sounds great.
then this one here. Yeah, tell me what you think about it. We'll talk about it then. You don't have to do it right away, but you may find it. So your friend, your girlfriend that told you about the ADHD, is she in Prince George?
She is. Yes, she was a photographer for a long time, and now she's not doing that so much anymore, but yes, she is around. And actually another good friend of mine that I believe has ADHD, who was also on your podcast, is Christine Buman. You might...
Did I have it on my podcast?
Yes, you did. She's also a friend of mine that I grew up with. So we are drawn to each other, I think.
I should give you a friend that talked to you and doesn't have a copy of my book, does he?
No, I don't think so.
The other one does, right? That was on my podcast.
Christine probably does,
yeah.
Yes.
So, Scott, can you give me a copy for...
Aw.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so sweet. She would love that.
Yeah.
So it's Melissa.
Melissa, and so you have
MELISSA. Awesome.
Michelle.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me as a guest.
Thanks for having me.
Having you as my guest on this podcast. I always like it because, with you in particular, we have so many things in common in many ways. And what I love about you and your story is your passion that you developed earlier, and then you being so candid about ADHD and all the experience around it, and some of the experience around Toastmasters. And we will stay in touch.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks, Michelle.
Thanks.
Take care.